ready to go. So hopefully you're not really. Hopefully we'll get through all these chapters because your test will be next Tuesday, and then the first part of your final is the next Thursday, and the last part of your final is the following Tuesday, because the last day of class is what? December the 12th, which is a Wednesday. And we don't meet on Wednesdays, right? We have to get everything done within 2 Tuesdays. We'll get there. Okay, so last time we met, we'll get there. I did say that I will cover influenza, right? Because it's really important. Some of us have gotten our flu shot already. It's a good thing to get. So I will only cover influenza in this chapter. Everything else you were to do on your own in terms of over the break. And then after this, we'll go right into the poop chapter. How's that sound? Awesome. Okay. Now we're talking about this picture here. And this is the flu pandemic of 1918-1919. So approximately 14 million people worldwide died that year based on the flu. You're thinking the flu's not a big deal? Well, it can be a big darn deal, okay? All right. So this is not a hospital. Okay, that's a gymnasium because people were so sick, the hospitals didn't have enough room, right? Exactly. You could be in a city, for example, and every week 10,000 people in your city die. I don't want to be in that ratio. Okay, that's not a good ratio to be in. Real quick, all right, let's talk about influenza. All right. Now, influenza can kind of start off like the cold, right? You can have a cough or sneeze, a headache. Here's the deal. Flu comes with a fever, okay? So if you have a cold, you can be coughing, you can have muscle aches with a cold. Here's the deal. You don't get a fever with a cold. You don't. However, if you have the symptoms like a cold and you got a fever and you feel sick all over, you feel tired, muscle aches all over, you probably have the flu. And you know you have the flu because it takes you out, okay? So this word here is basically muscle aches. So Malaysia is muscle aches. All the other things sound like a cold, right? Laryngitis, congestion, cough. But guess what? Fever, that's influenza. Okay. Now basically there are 2 types of influenza viruses. You got A and B, okay? We'll primarily focus on A because it's the A strain that has the different types of, I say, varieties, and that's why you need a flu shot every single year. So we'll talk about that. Now, mutations in these, wait a minute, that's not the one I wanted. Okay, no worries. In other words, these 2 proteins here, these proteins are basically attachment proteins on the virus. Because you learned in chapter 13 that viruses need to be able to do what? Attach to your cell in order to invade your cell to make you sick, correct? So these are proteins here. So hemagglutinin, this guy here, basically hemagglutinin is basically HA, okay? HA. So it's capital H, capital A. That's hemagglutinin, that's an attachment protein, as well as neuraminidase. So neuraminidase is NA, so capital N, capital A. These are both attachment proteins. And you basically have mutations in both of HA and NA. Now mutations in HA and NA give you basically new strains of the flu virus. Okay, so that's why every single year you need an up-to-date vaccine because it's mutations in those proteins that give you a whole new strain of virus. Makes sense? Okay, now, in these HA and NA strains, they cause either antigenic drift or antigenic shift. And I do want to spend some time on that because you will be held responsible for that. Now, quickly, here's a real quick cartoon of the influenza virus. It is an envelope virus, meaning as it's budding away from your cell, it steals, right, your membrane, so it has an envelope, correct? Okay. Now, these proteins here, there's NA right there, and the green guy is HA. Basically, this is how influenza binds into your cell and invades your cell, got it? And it's mutations in these green guys and red guys gives you new strains altogether. Okay, here's the deal. Now, this everything down here is showing you antigenic shift. That shift the drift. I can't even see it. You knew that? My birthday was yesterday, by the way. I need new glasses. Yes, drift. Okay, so that's antigenic drift. Basically, you are infected with the flu virus. Now, the flu virus, like all viruses, they tend to mutate their genomes, okay? So the flu virus is not unique in that, okay? So viruses tend to mutate, basically change their genome. So you got this, see how the guy's purple right now? Okay, so he goes into your cell, and all viruses, basically, their, in this case, this DNA comes out, okay, and it's going to use this DNA to make virus particles. Now, sometimes they can change their DNA. Basically, you get mutations. So you see how it starts off blue, and then it goes to red, it's back to blue, but you can't tell because now it has mutations. But the deal is, it's the same initial flu strain. You were only infected with one flu strain. And during that infection, the genome acquired mutations. As far as so good? So by the time that flu virus leaves your own cell, it's now a different flu virus because it made mutations while it was in your cell. How about that? How do you know? You see how this guy's a different color altogether? See that? It's trying to show you that this guy is slightly different from that one because it has mutations, right? That is called antigenic drift. Now, in terms of the frequency of that happening in a population, right? The frequency of you having a brand new flu strain so that your vaccine last year does not work this year, it happens about every 2 years. So in a given population, like Port St. Lucie, for example, it happens about every 2 years. So that's why on this graph here, this is number of cases, this is time in years, right? So 1 year, 2 years here, the number of cases go up. See that? That is antigenic drift. That's in a given population. Got it? Now over here, this is where you get your pandemics, okay? So your pandemics that come from antigenic drift, okay? Basically what's happening is you have been infected with 2 different flu viruses at the same time. So usually you get antigenic drift when you have a flu virus, say from a person, for example, like number 1, and the second flu virus comes from an animal. Because basically the flu virus hit it, Debbie.
Did you say that one was drift?
This guy's drift.
Okay.
I tell it again, it's shift. Shift.
Okay.
Yeah, so this guy is drift, and if I'm just saying it, don't pay me no mind. They're labeled correct.
Okay.
They're labeled correct. Yes, this guy is the shift. This is where you get your pandemics. Now, in the shift, you are infected with 2 different flu viruses. Now, influenza, it can be in people, but as well as animals like chickens and birds and pigs, okay? These are all hosts for influenza. So in other words, you've been infected with a human influenza virus as well as, say, a pig virus or a chicken virus. Makes sense? They're totally different. They're zoonotic, okay? They can be in chickens and birds and cattle. All right. Now, both these guys infect you, and while they're doing their thing, they both do their mutations, so they can both acquire mutation in their own genomes. But here is the deal. Here is the deal. When they're trying to package up their virons, in other words, they're packaging their material so they can leave again, correct? They take viral genomes from both viruses. In other words, it's not like virus 1 takes its own genome, right? And it's not like virus 2 takes its own genome. So in other words, virus 1 takes genomes from both virus 1 as well as virus 2. So now you have a totally brand new strain of influenza that no one's ever seen before. Make sense? Make sense? And this is why it's so bad. It's the bird flu. It's swine flu because no one has never seen it, which means most of you will be susceptible to it because you have literally a brand new flu strain. You combine like a human flu with a pig flu or bird flu. You make them into a brand new flu virus, and that's why every 10 years, see that? Every 10 years you get a pandemic because no one has ever seen that before. Make sense? Marissa, you have the question.
Yes, for the 2 different viruses, does the other one always, is it an animal or could it just be 2 different
Usually
strands?
it's from an animal. Because again, think about it. You've probably seen some variation of a human strain, right? Because you're humans. You've seen some variation of it. But if you're talking about an animal, you're not an animal, right? No, so usually you got an animal virus infecting you as well. And that's why they're so bad. Because you've never, no one's seen it before. Now usually these antigenic shifts take place in Asia. So basically they start off in Asia and they kind of make their way over to the Western Hemisphere. Because over in Asia, people tend to live very closely with animals. So they actually acquire the flu virus from chickens or pigs, literally. That's why the swine flu, for example, got started in Mexico, because people also in Mexico, for example, live closely with their animals too. So as you live closely with animals, you can actually acquire their flu virus. And their flu virus can combine with the human flu virus, right? And you have a brand new, totally new virus altogether. And that's why about every 10 years, you get so many cases of the flu because no one's seen it before. It's like a brand new strain, and they are deadly. They tend to be very bad.
Isn't that what they thought about HIV in the beginning? That it came from monkeys?
It came from monkeys initially. But HIV doesn't do this. It doesn't do that. HIV can mutate in you, but it's not combining with another type of HIV virus to make a brand new virus.
Even in the beginning, when it combined with the multivirus, that's not how it originally started.
Okay. Any questions about drift versus shift and why shift is really bad and shift is not so bad? Okay. Okie dokie. Now the symptoms you have from the flu is basically the result of your immune system trying to fight the virus off. Now, the flu can be bad, for example, because the flu virus damages the cells along the lung epithelium, which means you are now more susceptible to lung infections like pneumonia. So in other words, when you get the flu, you can get secondary infections from bacteria. So Haemophilus influenzae is called that because it was seen mostly in people with influenza. Makes sense? It causes pneumonia. Okay. Now, so it could be a good idea if you have the flu, depending on how bad your flu is, you can be put on antibiotics to prevent secondary bacterial infections, correct? But keep in mind, the antibiotics are not against the flu itself, right? It's just to protect you from getting pneumonia from bacteria. In terms of epidemiology, you either inhale the virus particles or you what? Self-inoculate yourself, right? Like touching particles, right? And then you touch your eyeballs, for example. That's how you get the flu. Now, usually, if you're like yourselves, if you get the flu, you're okay. Even if you don't get the vaccine, you probably won't die unless it's a pandemic kind of flu. You'll be okay, right? But if you're really old or the very young or people with chronic diseases, they can die from the flu. So that's why, for example, if you're over 65, get the flu vaccine, right? If you're a young child, get the flu vaccine. If you have other kind of disorder, like cancer, for example, get the flu vaccine because the flu can be fatal in those people. Now, with the general population, you really don't need the flu vaccines. If you get the flu, you'll be okay, right? You'll be all right. Okay. In terms of diagnoses, syphilis diagnosed looking at people in your population, right? So you get a couple of people going to the doctor's office, they have the same symptoms. It's indicative of a flu outbreak in your community. In terms of treatment, really you don't take drugs for the flu. It's basically supportive. Now when we say supportive, it means get rest, right? Drink fluids, don't go to work. Just lay up in the house for about a week or two. That's supportive therapy. That's how you do the flu. Let your body take care of itself. That's what you do. But really, how do you prevent it? By getting a multivalent vaccine. So multivalent means different strains of the flu are in that vaccine, and that's how you kind of prevent the flu altogether. Now here's the deal. You can get a flu shot this year. Now, how do they do it? They basically look at Asia, right? I said the flu starts in Asia, different strains of it start over in Asia. And they have people, they being the CDC, they have people over in Asia doing surveillance, looking at the possible up and coming flu viruses over in Asia. And then they start making vaccines against the strains in Asia because they suspect that will come over here at some point. Now, your vaccine is only effective against whatever strain they use, right? But there are several different strains of flu out there. So let's say you've got a vaccine against flu A, for example. Well, if you got flu B, guess what? You're going to get sick, makes sense? So don't think just because you get the flu vaccine it's 100% effective, right? It's only effective against the strain that's in that vaccine. Got it? Okay. I think that's all I wanted to share with you with that, because everything else was on your own. Now,
what is their flu supposed to do? I mean, do you know?
It's basically like acetaminophen. It's like a pain reliever. That's
Just
all that it
trying to
is.
block the metabolism of the
Oh gosh, no. Their flu is